Wanted to finish with a flourish there, and didn't she just do so very well to handle a moment when 5-3 down in the opening sets of this one. No love lost between these two. One thing you know for sure, Taylor Townsend ain't for backing down.
Not at all. You can see that emotion coming out of Taylor there. The entire court on court 11. Taylor egging it on. You love to see that competitive fight. All she's been through.
Taylor, congratulations. Fiery match start to finish. We'll get to it all. Can you fill us in on the conversation you were having with Jelena out there?
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's competition. People get upset when they lose, and you can't. Some people say bad things. She told me I have no class, I have no education, and to see what happens when we get outside the U.S. So I'm looking forward to it. I mean, I beat her in Canada outside the U.S. I beat her in New York outside the U.S. So let's see what else she has to say.
Few players in the modern game stir as much debate as Jelena Ostapenko, and her latest controversy has pushed that debate into the boardrooms of the WTA. With Portia Archer now leading the organization, talk of an unofficial blacklist has ignited across media and fan circles, framing Ostapenko not just as a fiery competitor, but as a test case for how far the sport will go to protect its image. What began as isolated backlash has become a defining moment that could reshape both her career and the tour's direction. Ostapenko's reputation for volatility is no longer just anecdotal. The numbers back it up. Over the past 2 seasons, she has accumulated more code violations than most of her top 20 peers, with fines for racket abuse and repeated time delays highlighting her combustible style. At the same time, her performances swing wildly, with matches where she delivers 30-plus winners offset by error counts just as high. Her breakpoint conversion sits near 41%, noticeably below the tour average of 48%, a reminder of how fragile her momentum can be. This unpredictability has created a difficult scenario for the WTA as it tries to grow viewership and attract sponsors. When Ostapenko reached the Doha quarterfinals earlier this year, Eurosport reported a 12% bump in live audience numbers, yet the headlines afterward centered on her clashes with officials. Clips of those incidents trended online, generating millions of views but skewing fan sentiment heavily negative. For Portia Archer, who has emphasized discipline and marketability in her vision for the tour, the risks around amplifying Ostapenko may finally outweigh the benefits. The reason this moment carries weight is because Ostapenko's form and profile intersect directly with the WTA's larger goals. On court, she remains dangerous. Her first serve often cracks 115 miles per hour, and she still averages over 20 winners per match. But her inconsistency has cost her ranking stability. She has hovered between number 12 and number 30 for much of the past 2 years, limiting her chances to be seeded deep at majors and reducing her prize money compared to steadier rivals. In 2024, she earned just under $1.8 million, less than half of what Aryna Sabalenka or Iga Swiatek collected. That financial gap matters when the WTA seeks to market stars who can lead sponsorship conversations and guarantee packed stadiums. For Archer, every player promoted through official campaigns is essentially an investment, and Ostapenko's volatility threatens to undermine that brand equity. Fans have noticed too. At the US Open, resale prices for her early round matches lagged almost 40% below sessions featuring Goff or Swiatek. The backlash, amplified through social media, has turned what might once have been dismissed as fiery competitiveness into a larger test of credibility for both the player and the tour's new leadership. Tennis history shows that controversy doesn't always end a career, but it does reshape reputations. Serena Williams' 2009 US Open outburst led to a $175,000 fine and months of headlines, yet her dominance quickly restored her standing. Maria Sharapova's suspension in 2016 cost her major sponsors overnight, and while she eventually returned, her endorsement profile never recovered to the same level. Ostapenko's case is different. She doesn't have the resume of multiple slams or the global brand power of Serena or Sharapova, meaning the margin for error is slimmer. Viewership data underscores the contrast. When Osaka returned to Melbourne in 2023, streaming audiences surged past 1.5 million globally, fueled by sympathetic storylines. By comparison, Ostapenko's biggest spikes in engagement often follow disputes with officials, with nearly 60% of social chatter coded as negative. That imbalance makes her far riskier as a flagship figure. Where past champions could lean on history to rebuild trust, Ostapenko faces a narrower path, and Archer appears less inclined to gamble on volatility in a marketplace increasingly focused on stability. The sponsorship picture reveals just how costly this backlash may become. Apparel and racket deals rely on steady visibility, and while Ostapenko's Lotto partnership remains intact, industry insiders note she has not added a major global brand since her 2017 Roland Garros triumph. By contrast, younger stars like Coco Gauff and Emma Raducanu have attracted multi-million-dollar campaigns across Nike, New Balance, and Tiffany. Fan sentiment is equally telling. At Wimbledon last year, cheers for Ostapenko's shot-making were often drowned out by groans when she argued with officials, a dynamic echoed in survey data showing her fan approval rating lagging well behind peers. Media framing reinforces this split. European outlets highlight her power and unpredictability, while US coverage leans heavily into her confrontations. For Portia Archer, who has positioned the WTA as a growth property, aiming to double its broadcast revenues within 5 years, aligning the brand with players who risk alienating global audiences looks counterproductive. That is why whispers of a blacklist have weight. It signals a deliberate cooling of promotional support rather than an outright ban, quietly shifting attention to players deemed safer investments. Looking ahead, the trajectory of Ostapenko's career may hinge less on her raw talent and more on how the WTA chooses to position her. If she continues to be sidelined in official marketing, the effect on her visibility could influence sponsorship renewals and her long-term earning power. Prize money alone rarely sustains players outside the top 10, and with her ranking hovering in the teens and 20s, she risks sliding further if inconsistency continues. Projections from analysts suggest that maintaining a year-end ranking outside the top 15 could cost her upwards of $500,000 annually in lost appearance fees and endorsements. At the same time, this situation gives Archer leverage to set a precedent. Players who cross certain behavioral lines will not receive the same platform, no matter their entertainment value. For rising stars like Zheng Qinwen or Mira Andreeva, the message is clear: professionalism is as important as power. The real implication is cultural as much as financial. Whether the WTA can create a standard that preserves the sport's appeal without alienating fans who enjoy the drama that players like Ostapenko inevitably provide. Ostapenko's saga now feels less like a personal controversy and more like a test of the WTA's identity under Portia Archer. The talk of a blacklist may never be made official, but the signs are visible in her reduced presence across promotional reels, media campaigns, and broadcast highlights. For a player once seen as a future cornerstone of the tour, the cost of backlash has become measurable in ranking points, in lost marketability, and in fan trust. The question now is whether this approach strengthens the WTA's image or risks silencing the very personalities that spark debate and attention. Should tennis embrace players like Ostapenko for their drama, or does the sport's future depend on rewarding consistency and restraint?